Welcome to Expedition Bible. I'm Joel Kramer. Today I'm going to be talking about the archaeological evidence for crucifixion. In the New Testament, we have a detailed account of Jesus' crucifixion. And for example, in Acts 2:23, it says of Jesus, they put him to death by nailing him to the cross. Is there any archaeological evidence that the Romans put Jews to death by nailing them to crosses? In 1968, in the northeast area of Jerusalem, a tomb was discovered and excavated. And inside this tomb was found one of these limestone bone boxes called an ossuary. And inside of the ossuary were found the remains, according to the excavation report, of an individual male between 24 and 28 years old. Now, according to the excavation report, both of the ankle bones of this individual had been pierced by an iron nail, and this undoubtedly was a case of crucifixion. In fact, one of the heel bones of this individual had a nail still embedded through it. We know the name of this individual because it's inscribed onto the ossuary itself. His name is Yehohanan. And so this embedded nail through Yehohanan's ankle is on display at the Israel Museum, but this is a replica. The real artifact is kept in a lab down in the Department of Anatomy and Anthropology at the University of Tel Aviv, where it's still studied by scholars today. And if you look at the nail sticking through Yehohanan's ankle bone, you'll see that the tip is bent. And what is believed to have happened is that when it was driven through his ankle into the wooden beam, it hit a knot of wood and that bent the tip of the nail. So when the Romans came to retrieve the nail to reuse it, it was stuck. And they ended up having to cut it out of the wood. And so Yehohanan ended up being buried with the nail still sticking through his ankle, which allowed this archaeological evidence to be preserved and to be found later by archaeologists. The drawing of Yehohanan is only of his lower half because it's undetermined how his hands were attached to the cross. However, we know from the archaeological evidence that his feet were nailed to either side of the beam of the cross through his ankle bones. So there's no question that Yehohanan ended his life nailed to a cross. In 1970, another tomb nearby this first one was discovered and excavated, and inside of it also was found an ossuary. And inside of this ossuary, 3 iron nails were found with bones still fused to them. So these bones were originally turned over to Dr. Niku Haas, who was the leading physical anthropologist in Israel at the time. He studied them and determined that this was further evidence for crucifixion, that this individual, who he determined to be about a 25-year-old male, ended his life nailed to a cross through his hands, and it was his hand bones that were still fused onto these nails. Now, these nails are also kept at the same lab down at the University of Tel Aviv, and they have been studied today by Dr. Israel Hershkovitz. And Dr. Hershkovitz has studied them intensively under a very high-powered microscope, and he has determined that when the nails were driven through this individual's hands, that it broke some of the hand bones, and it's the bones from his hand bones that are fused still to these nails. Dr. Hershkovitz is in agreement with the original interpretation by Dr. Haas that this is, in fact, further evidence of crucifixion, that this individual died being nailed to the cross through his hands. Now, in this case, they're not sure how his feet were attached to the cross, and so we have the illustration based on the archaeological evidence showing the upper part of this man's body and